The Lady and the Wanderer. Friends, before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell so you never miss a new audiobook, and give this video a thumbs up. Thank you in advance. Part 1. The Gilded Cage and the Threat of Fate. The city of Aurelian did not simply exist upon the earth. It defied it. Suspended in the Empyrean Sea above the clouds, it was a symphony in gold and marble, its spires like needles threading the heavens. From the vaulted windows of the Solaris Palace, the world below was a forgotten dream, a canvas of swirling mist and distant shadowed lands. Here in the thin crystalline air, Lysandra of the House of Argent stood at her balcony, her soul feeling as weightless and as trapped as the city itself. The evening gong echoed, a sonorous golden sound that vibrated through the very bones of the palace. It was the call to the equinox ball, a night of glittering masks and hollow laughter, a night that was to be the formal announcement of her betrothal. Her fingers, sheathed in gloves of moon-pale silk, tightened on the balustrade. The stone was cold, even though the sun, setting in a blaze of rose and violet, set the clouds beneath them aflame. She was dressed in a gown the color of a deep twilight, sewn with infinitesimal crystals that caught the dying light, making her look like a fragment of the night sky held captive in a mortal form. A beautiful, preordained prison. Her betrothed, Lord Varec, was a man whose power was as palpable as the chill that preceded a storm. He was the high sorcerer of the Sunstone Throne, a man who did not command armies of men, but legions of shadows and whispers. It was said his magic was fed by a unique and terrible sustenance, the souls of those who loved him. He did not conquer through fear alone, but through a dreadful parasitic devotion. To be loved by Varec was to be consumed, to have one's affection turned into the very fuel that would extinguish one's own light. It was a political match, of course. Her family's ancient name, slightly tarnished by time, for his bottomless, terrifying power. A transaction like any other in the markets of the lower rings. "My lady," a soft voice intruded. Ilara, her handmaiden and only confidant, stood in the doorway, her face etched with a sympathy she dared not voice aloud. "It is time. They are waiting." Lysandra turned, the crystals on her dress whispering secrets against each other. "Let them wait," she murmured, but the words held no defiance, only the quiet exhaustion of a bird that has beaten its wings against a gilded cage for too long. The grand ballroom was a spectacle of enforced joy. 1,000 candles floated in midair, their light reflecting off polished quartz floors and walls inlaid with mother of pearl. The air was thick with the scent of starlight blossoms and expensive perfumes. Nobles in silks and jewels moved like carefully orchestrated fish in a gilded pond, their conversations a low hum of pleasantries that masked sharp calculations. And at the center of it all, a vortex of stillness and intensity, stood Lord Varec. He was handsome in the way a honed blade is beautiful. His hair was the color of polished obsidian, his eyes the deep, unsettling purple of a twilight bruise. When his gaze found Lysandra across the room, it was not a look of affection, but of appraisal, a collector assessing a new acquisition. He offered a thin, bloodless smile, and she felt a cold thread weave its way around her heart. "He is waiting, daughter." Her father's voice was a low, urgent pressure at her elbow. His face was a mask of paternal pride, but his eyes, the same storm gray as her own, pleaded with her. "For the family. For our survival." She allowed herself to be led towards him, the crowd parting like a sea before a royal vessel. Each step felt like walking towards her own execution. Varek extended a hand, his fingers long and pale, the nails perfectly manicured. As his skin brushed against her glove, a shiver, cold and unwelcome, traced its way up her spine. His touch felt like the absence of warmth, a void. "My dear Lysandra," he said, his voice a silken caress that felt like a violation. "You are the jewel of this evening. Soon, you will be the jewel of my house." She forced a smile, a brittle, fragile thing. "You are too kind, my lord." The music began again. A complex waltz spun from enchanted strings that played the very emotions of the musicians. Varek led her into the dance, his hold firm, possessive. As they moved, she caught glimpses of the other guests. Their eyes held not envy but a profound, shuddering pity. They knew. Everyone knew the price of being the object of Varek's attention. It was during the third turn of the dance, as she was locked in the prison of Varek's gaze, that she saw him. He was standing in the shadow of a great arched doorway, half concealed by a cascading drapery of silver vines. He was not dressed for the ball. His clothes were of sturdy, travel-worn leather and dark, soft linen, starkly out of place amidst the silks and satins. He was tall, with a lean, wiry strength, and hair the color of weathered ash. But it was his eyes that arrested her. Even from across the room, she could see they were the color of a gathering storm, a turbulent, luminous gray, and they were fixed directly on her. He was not looking at her with the avarice of Varek, or the pity of the courtiers. His gaze was one of pure, unadulterated observation, sharp and intelligent, and beneath it, she felt something she had not felt in years, truly seen. A jolt like static from a skyship's engine passed through her. Varek felt it, his grip tightening infinitesimally. "Is something the matter?" he asked, his voice dangerously soft. "No," she breathed, tearing her eyes away, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped thing. "Nothing." But when she dared to glance back, the man was gone. Only the shifting silver vines remained, as if he had been a trick of the light, a phantom woven from her own desperate longing for something, anything, other than this preordained fate. The ball dragged on into the deep star-flecked hours. The pressure of Varek's presence, the weight of countless stares became suffocating. Pleading a need for air, Lysandra extricated herself and slipped through a side archway, descending a narrow, spiraling staircase that led to one of the palace's many secluded terraces. This one was smaller, a crescent of white stone jutting out over the abyss. Here, the music from the ball was a distant echo, and the only sound was the eternal, whispering wind that sang through the suspension spires of Aurelian. She leaned against the railing, gulping in the cold, clean air, staring down at the world below. The cloud sea churned, a vast, silent ocean of vapor, and below that she knew were the real lands, the uncharted wilds, the places of true life and true danger, places she would never see. "It's a long way down." The voice was low, calm, and came from the shadows behind her. She spun around, her hand flying to her throat. There, leaning against the wall as if he belonged there, was the man from the ball. Up close, he was older than she had first thought, perhaps in his early 30s, his face etched with the fine lines of a life spent under open skies. His storm-gray eyes held a light of their own, a weary, ancient intelligence. "Who are you?" she demanded, trying to inject an authority she did not feel into her voice. "How did you get past the guards?" "The guards are looking for threats from without," he said, pushing himself off the wall and taking a slow, non-threatening step forward. Not from within the guest list of a rather ambitious sky merchant whose papers I may have borrowed. The name is Kale." He gave a slight, mocking bow that held no mockery for her, only for the situation. "Kale," she repeated, the name feeling foreign and solid on her tongue. "You are not of the court." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "No, I am not of any court. I am a passer-through, a wanderer. What are you doing here?" He moved to stand beside her at the railing, not too close, but near enough that she could smell the scent of him, of leather, night air, and something else, something clean and sharp like ozone after a lightning strike. He looked out at the vast expanse, his profile sharp against the starry veil. "I come to Aurelian from time to time," he said, his voice thoughtful. "It is a useful place to hear things. The higher you are, the farther the whispers travel. And tonight, the whispers are particularly loud." He turned his head, and his gaze once again was a physical weight upon her. "They whisper about you, my lady, Lysandra of the House of Argent. And they whisper about your betrothal." She flinched, turning away from him. "That is none of your concern." "Perhaps not," he conceded. "But I make it my concern to understand the currents of power. And the current that flows around Lord Varec is a dark and hungry one." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was softer, laced with a strange, resonant sadness. "He is a void, a man who trades in the currency of spent affection. To be bound to him is to have your light slowly siphoned away until you are a husk, echoing with the memory of your own love." Tears, hot and sudden, pricked at Lysandra's eyes. He had put into words the formless dread that had coiled in her belly for months. She wrapped her arms around herself. "You speak of things you cannot know." "I can see it," Kale said, and his voice held a note of such profound, weary truth that she was compelled to look at him. He was staring at her, not at her face, but at the space around her. His stormy eyes narrowed as if focusing on something she could not perceive. "See what?" she whispered. He was silent for a long moment, as if deciding whether to trust her with a terrible secret. Then he lifted his hand, not to touch her, but to gesture vaguely in the space between her and the distant palace lights. "The threads," he murmured, his voice barely louder than the wind. "The threads that connect one heart to another. They are everywhere. Some are bright and strong, golden and vibrant. Others are thin, frayed things, gray with neglect or black with betrayal. The bonds of family, of friendship, of love to me, they are as visible as the stars in the sky." Lysandra stared at him, her mind reeling. Was he mad? A charlatan? Yet his demeanor held no madness, no guile. Only a deep, abiding certainty. "And what do you see?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What threads do you see around me?" His eyes moved, tracing invisible lines in the air. "I see a thin, cold thread leading from you back into the ballroom to Varec. It is not a thread of love. It is a chain, dark and slick, and it is already beginning to leach the color from your own light." His gaze shifted, softening. "And I see another, a bright, stubborn filament of gold, leading back to your handmaiden Alara. A true bond, the only one that seems to hold any warmth for you in this gilded prison." A sob caught in Lysandra's throat. He was right. Devastatingly, impossibly right. How can you know that?" Kale finally looked directly into her eyes, and in their stormy depths, she saw a flicker of his own pain, a light that was slowly, inevitably dying. "Because I am the son of a fallen star and a mortal woman. I am a child of two worlds, and I was born with this curse, this gift. I can see the architecture of the heart, but every time I care for someone, every time a thread of my own begins to glow, a little of my celestial light fades. To love is for me to die." The confession hung between them, immense and terrifying. The wind whispered around them, carrying the faint dying notes of the waltz. In that moment, the gilded cage of Aurelian, the terror of Varec, the weight of her family's expectations, all of it fell away. There was only this man, this wanderer, with his terrible truth and his fading light, who saw the very fabric of her soul. And Lysandra knew, with a certainty that shook her to her core, that her life would never be the same again. Part 2. A sky of shattered glass. The silence that followed Cale's confession was not empty. It was thick, charged, like the air before a sky-shattering tempest. Lysandra could only stare at him, the world tilting on its axis. A son of a star? A man who could see the bonds of the heart, whose very love was his mortality. It was a tale spun from starlight and sorrow, too fantastical to be believed, and yet it resonated with a truth so profound it echoed in the hollow spaces of her own caged heart. "You," she began, her voice a ragged whisper. "You are telling me you are a myth." "I am telling you what I am," Cale replied, his gaze unwavering. "Whether it makes me a myth or a monster is a matter of perspective." He glanced towards the archway leading back into the palace, his body tensing. "We do not have much time. The music has stopped. They will be looking for you." Panic, cold and sharp, lanced through her. Varec. Her absence would not have gone unnoticed. The image of that dark, leeching thread he had described flashed in her mind, and a visceral revulsion twisted her stomach. "What do I do?" The question was out before she could stop it, a plea born of pure, undiluted terror. She was asking a stranger, a self-professed celestial vagabond, for salvation. Cale's eyes scanned her face, reading the panic there as clearly as if it were written in ink. "You have a choice, Lady Lysandra. You can return to the ballroom, take Varec's hand, and let that dark thread tighten until it strangles the light from you. Or," he paused, his stormy eyes holding hers, "you can take a step into the unknown. With me. With you." A hysterical laugh bubbled in her throat. "To where?" "You are a wanderer. I am a daughter of Aurelian. I have never set foot beyond the market square. There is a whole world below these gilded clouds," he said, his voice dropping to an urgent, compelling whisper. "A world of shadow and starlight, of ruins that float like forgotten dreams in seas where new suns are born. It is dangerous and wild, and more beautiful than anything you can imagine from this balcony. But it is real." From within the palace, a voice called her name. It was her father's, laced with a strain of alarm. The hunt was beginning. The sound was a trigger. It was the sound of her life being measured, packaged, and sold. It was the sound of the cage door slamming shut. She looked at Cale, at his honest, weary face, at the faint ethereal light that seemed to cling to him. A light she now understood was literally dying. She thought of the bright thread connecting her to Alara, the only genuine thing in her life. "Alara," she breathed. "I cannot leave her to face their wrath." Cale's expression softened. "A loyal heart is a rare treasure. We can get her to safety, but we must go now." Decision, sharp and clear, cut through the fog of her fear. She would not be a husk. She would not be consumed. She would rather fade in the true starlight than be extinguished in this golden gloom. "Wait here," she said, her voice suddenly steady. She gathered the heavy skirts of her twilight gown and slipped back through the archway, moving not towards the ballroom, but down a servants' corridor she had known since childhood. She found Alara in her antechamber, wringing her hands, her face pale. "My lady, they are asking for you. Lord Varec is—" "Alara, listen to me," Lysandra interrupted, gripping her handmaid's shoulders. "I am leaving. Tonight. Now." Alara's eyes widened in horror. "My lady, you cannot. The disgrace. The danger. He will do nothing to you if you are not here," Lysandra said firmly. "You must come with me." Terror and loyalty warred on Alara's face. "Where would we go?" "Anywhere but here." Lysandra squeezed her hands. "Please. You are my only friend." The word friend decided it. Alara's jaw set with a resolve Lysandra had rarely seen. She gave a sharp nod. "What do you need?" "Your cloak. And your pass key to the lower storage silos." Minutes later, two figures shrouded in plain gray woolen cloaks hurried down the spiraling staircase, leaving the glittering prison of the upper palace behind. They met Kale on the terrace, his eyes glinting with approval as he took in their disguises. "The storage silos lead to the public skydocks," Lysandra explained, her breath misting in the cold air. "Fewer guards." "Good," Kale said. "Follow me and do exactly as I say. The skydocks are not a place for nobility." Their descent was a blur of shadowy, cold corridors and the vast, echoing spaces of the cargo silos, where great sacks of levity spores and sun grains were stored. The air smelled of dust, damp stone, and the faint metallic tang of the ether that kept Aurelian aloft. Finally, they emerged onto a wide, windswept platform, the public skydocks. It was a world away from the opulent ballroom. The air was thick with the smells of tar, sweat, and roasting chestnuts. Skyships of all shapes and sizes were moored like great beasts, their hulls of carved wood and reinforced leather creaking as they strained against their tethers. Sailors, merchants, and travelers of a dozen different races jostled and shouted, a symphony of coarse life that was both terrifying and exhilarating. Kale moved through the chaos with the practiced ease of a predator, his body a shield between them and the crowd. He led them towards a smaller vessel, tucked away in a shadowy berth. It was not a grand ship, but it had a certain rugged elegance. Its hull was dark, polished wood, its sails furled tight, and its figurehead was a carved, graceful bird of prey with eyes of glowing amber. "The Storm Petrel," Kale said, a note of pride in his voice. "She's fast and she doesn't draw attention." As they approached the gangplank, a figure detached itself from the shadows. He was a hulking man with skin the color of weathered teak and a thick, braided beard adorned with what looked like animal teeth. A heavy cutlass was strapped to his hip. "Kale," the man rumbled, his voice like grinding stones. "You're late. And you've brought guests." His single good eye, the other was covered by a patch, narrowed as it swept over Lysandra and Alara. "Boren, this is Lysandra and Alara. They are coming with us," Kale said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "We need to cast off. Now." Boren grunted, his gaze lingering on the fine line of Lysandra's jaw, the way she carried herself even in a servant's cloak. "Trouble. The worst kind. Palace trouble." A grim smile touched Boren's lips. "My favorite." He jerked his head towards the ship. "Get aboard. We'll be a ghost before they know you're gone." They had just set foot on the deck of the Storm Petrel when a shout echoed from the dock. Halt! In the name of the Sunstone Throne. Lysandra whirled around. A squad of the Aurelian Guard, their golden armor gleaming under the docklights, were pushing through the crowd, their spears held ready. And at their head was Lord Varec. His face was a mask of cold fury, his purple eyes burning with a dark inner fire. "Lysandra," he called, his voice cutting through the noise like a shard of ice. "Do not be a fool. Return to me now, and this indiscretion will be forgiven." Kale was already at the ship's wheel, his hands moving over the complex array of crystalline controls. "Boren! The mooring lines. Now!" Boren moved with a speed that belied his size, his cutlass flashing as he severed the thick ropes tethering the ship to the dock. The Storm Petrel lurched suddenly free. Varec's hand shot out. A ribbon of pure darkness, cold and silent, snaked from his fingertips towards the ship. It was not fire or lightning, but the absence of all energy, a void that sought to consume the very air around them. "Hold on!" Kale shouted. He didn't try to evade it. Instead, he raised his own hand. From his palm erupted a light, not the harsh, blinding flash of a spell, but a soft, steady, silvery radiance, the light of a clear, starry night. It met Varec's void not with force, but with presence. The darkness writhed, unable to extinguish the gentle, unwavering starlight. The Storm Petrel's engines hummed to life, ether crystals along its hull flaring with a blue-white intensity. With a groan of protesting wood and a surge of power, the ship pitched forward, diving off the edge of the dock and into the open, star-dusted sky. Lysandra clung to the railing, the wind whipping her hood back and tearing the pins from her hair. She watched as Aurelian, her home, her prison, receded into a glittering golden toy suspended in the clouds. The cold air burned her lungs, but it was a cleansing burn. She was free. She turned to look at Kale, who stood steady at the wheel, his face etched with concentration, his stormy eyes reflecting the countless stars above. The silvery light that had held Varec's void at bay still flickered faintly around his form. He had spoken of his light fading with every act of love. He had just risked everything, revealed everything for her. A stranger. As the ship sailed into the boundless black velvet of the night, leaving the gilded cage far behind, Lysandra felt a new, terrifying, and exhilarating thread begin to spin itself from her heart towards the man at the wheel. It was fragile, bright, and shimmering with the color of a hope she had long forgotten. And she knew, with a certainty that both thrilled and terrified her, that Kale could see it. Part 3. The Market of Whispers and the Weeping Ruins. The world below the clouds was not an empty void, but a realm of breathtaking, terrifying depth. The Storm Petrel sailed through a sea of twilight, where islands of rock and earth, draped in viridian moss and twisted, ancient trees, floated in the silent expanse. Waterfalls cascaded from their edges into the nothingness below, their waters catching the starlight like falling diamonds. The air was colder, thinner, and filled with the scent of damp earth, alien blossoms, and the pure, sharp tang of the ether that wove the fabric of this reality together. For the first few hours, Lysandra could do nothing but cling to the railing, her knuckles white, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. Alara sat huddled nearby, her face pale but resolute. Wrapped in a coarse blanket, Boren had grunted and tossed her way. The immensity of what they had done was a physical weight, a vertigo that had nothing to do with the altitude. Kale was a steady presence at the wheel, his movements economical and sure. He navigated the labyrinth of floating islands with an innate knowledge, as if he could feel the currents of the sky the way a sailor felt the ocean's pull. "It's vast," Lysandra finally managed, her voice small against the whispering wind. Cale glanced at her, a hint of that weary smile touching his eyes. This is just the shallows, the borderlands between the floating empires and the true wilds. He pointed towards a distant, swirling nebula of violet and silver light. That is the Veil of Sighs. Beyond it lies the night sea, and places where the maps are written in starlight and guesswork. Why did you help us? The question had been burning in her since they fled. You said loving caring costs you. Why risk it for a stranger? He was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the star-dusted horizon. I have been alone a long time, Lysandra. I walk through a world woven with a billion glowing threads of connection, and I am a man dying of thirst in a sea of fresh water. To touch any of it is to be poisoned. He finally looked at her, and the raw loneliness in his eyes stole her breath. But when I saw you in that ballroom, surrounded by all that false gold, I saw a light that had not yet been extinguished, a spirit that was still fighting to breathe. And the thread Varek was spinning around you, it was an abomination. Some lines should not be crossed. Even for a man who must remain detached, there is such a thing as a step too far. His words settled in her soul, a balm and a burden. He had not acted out of some grand romantic design, but out of a fundamental weary decency. It made his sacrifice feel even more profound. Bourne brought them a simple meal of hardtack, dried fruit, and a sharp, potent cheese. As they ate, the initial terror began to recede, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion. Cale guided the storm petrel into the lee of a massive, mushroom-capped island, its underside glowing with soft, bioluminescent fungi, and set the ship to a gentle hover. Rest, he said to Lysandra. The journey ahead is long. We'll need to find supplies and information. And for that, we go to the Market of Shadows. Sleep when it came was fitful. Lysandra dreamed of dark threads tightening around her throat, and of Cale's starlight guttering out like a spent candle. She woke with a start to the soft gray of false dawn filtering through the strange sky. Elara was still asleep, but Cale was at the bow, his back to her, perfectly still. She approached him quietly. He was staring out at the horizon, but his gaze was turned inward, his expression one of such deep sorrow it made her chest ache. And then she saw it. Faint, almost imperceptible, a silvery shimmer in the air around him, like heat haze on a summer day. It was thinner than it had been the night before. "You're fading," she whispered, the words a statement, not a question. He didn't turn. "A little. Using my light like that, it has a cost. And..." He hesitated. "And new connections are formed. They take energy to sustain, even if they are not yet fully realized." She understood. He was talking about the fragile, hopeful thread she felt spinning from her own heart. "I'm sorry." "Don't be," he said, his voice firm. He finally looked at her, and the storm in his eyes was calm, resolved. A slow death in the light is preferable to an eternity in the shadows. I made my choice. The Market of Shadows was not a place one found on any official chart. It existed in the perpetual twilight of a debris field, the colossal broken remnants of a floating city that had fallen from grace centuries ago. Hulks of ancient palaces and temples drifted together, their shattered spires forming a chaotic, sprawling labyrinth. Dozens of ships, from sleek, predatory skiffs to ponderous barge-like traders, were moored to the ruins, their lanterns casting a kaleidoscope of colored lights onto the broken stone. Kale navigated the storm petrel into a hidden crevice between two leaning towers, mooring it with an almost silent grace. "Stay close to me," he instructed, his voice low, "and do not look anyone in the eye for too long. This is a place of business, not courtesy." The market was a sensory assault. The air was thick with the smell of sizzling exotic meats, pungent spices, and the oily scent of ether tech. Hawkers cried their wares in a dozen guttural languages, offering everything from bottled memories and captured dreams to illegal star charts and venom-tipped daggers. Creatures of all shapes and sizes moved through the crowded, makeshift walkways, tall, slender beings with skin of bark, short, stocky folk with eyes like polished coal, and things that were barely humanoid at all. Lysandra kept her hood up, her hand unconsciously finding the back of Kale's leather jerkin, holding onto it like a lifeline. Elara stayed pressed to her other side, her eyes wide with fear and wonder. Kale moved with purpose, leading them to a stall tucked deep within the ribcage of a fallen Leviathan. It was manned by a wizened old woman with skin like wrinkled parchment and eyes that were milky white, yet saw everything. Bunches of dried herbs, strange bones, and glowing crystals hung from the fossilized bones around her. "Kale," the old woman crooned, her voice like the rustling of dead leaves. "The Skywalker returns, and he brings shadows with him. Interesting shadows." Her blind eyes seemed to fix on Lysandra. "We need passage whispers, Grandmother Neth," Kale said, placing a small, smooth stone that pulsed with a soft, inner light on her counter. "And word of the Star Hunters." The old woman's claw-like hand snatched the stone. She weighed it in her palm, a slow smile spreading across her face. "The hunters are stirring. A great hunger moves in the deep night. They are drawn to powerful lights, old lights." Her milky gaze shifted to Kale. "And new lights born of stars and stone." Lysandra felt a chill. Stone. Was that what she was? The earthbound daughter of a floating city? The Aurelian sun sorcerer has offered a king's ransom for the return of his lost jewel, Neth continued, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. "His shadows are already here asking questions. And the star hunters, they follow the scent of his magic. It tastes of emptiness. They crave what he destroys." Kale's jaw tightened. "Is there a safe route to the fallen kingdoms? To the weeping ruins?" Neth cackled, a dry, rasping sound. "Safe? Nothing is safe, Star Child. But the old Sky Road, the one that passes through the heart of the Leviathan, it is forgotten by most. The ruins there weep with the memory of what was. It may hide your light from the hunters for a time." She tossed a small carved bone whistle to him. "The price is paid. Do not linger here. The shadows have ears." They moved back through the thronging market, the sense of being hunted now a palpable thing. Lysandra could feel unseen eyes upon them, and every golden-clad figure in the distance made her heart stutter. As they turned a corner into a slightly quieter avenue dedicated to cartographers and chart sellers, Kale suddenly stopped, his body going rigid. He was staring at a narrow alleyway between two crumbling structures. His storm-gray eyes were wide, his face a mask of anguish. Lysandra followed his gaze, but she saw nothing except shadows and drifting dust. "What is it?" she asked, her voice tight with alarm. "The threads." He breathed, his voice choked with pain. "So many, all severed. All at once." He took a step towards the alley, his hand outstretched as if to touch something she could not see. This was a place of great love once. Community. A family. I can see the ghosts of the bonds like pale scars in the air, but they were all cut, torn away." He looked at her, his eyes haunted. The Star Hunters were here. This is what they do. They don't just kill. They consume the very love that bound people together, leaving only this silent, screaming emptiness. A profound horror washed over Lysandra. This was worse than anything Varric could do. This was a violation of the soul's very architecture. The philosophical horror of it struck her deeply. What was a person, what was a place without the love that had shaped it? It was a memory without meaning, a song without music. It was in that moment of shared horror that the attack came, not from the shadows but from the sky above. A ship, sleek and black, shaped like a barbed arrowhead, descended upon the market with a terrifying silence. It was unlike any vessel Lysandra had ever seen. It seemed to drink the light around it, and standing on its deck were figures clad in armor that looked like frozen twilight. They were tall, impossibly slender, and their faces were hidden behind smooth, reflective helms. In their hands they held not weapons of steel, but ornate, glass-like devices that pulsed with a sickly, greenish light. The Star Hunters. One of them raised its device. The pulse of light shot out, not towards a person, but towards the space between a laughing merchant and the woman who was clearly his wife. The air itself seemed to warp, and a faint golden shimmer, a thread Lysandra could now only imagine, was ripped from the space between the couple and drawn into the device. The merchant and his wife didn't scream. They simply deflated. Their laughter died, their posture slumped, and they looked at each other with blank, empty confusion, as if trying to remember a dream upon waking. Panic erupted. The market became a frenzy of screaming and fleeing bodies. "To the ship!" Cale roared, shoving Lysandra and Alara behind him. He drew a simple, unadorned sword from his belt, but its blade began to glow with his same soft silvery light. A hunter turned its blank helm towards them. It seemed to sense Cale's light, a far richer prize than the simple marital love it had just consumed. It raised its device. Cale met the beam of sickly green with a shield of pure starlight. The two forces collided with a sound like shattering crystal. But another hunter was already moving, flanking them, its weapon aimed directly at Lysandra. Without thinking, driven by an instinct she didn't understand, Lysandra stepped forward. She had no magic, no light to fight with. But as the hunter's beam lanced towards her, she felt a surge of defiance, of a will that had been caged for too long. She raised her hands not to block the beam, but as if to grasp the very air in front of her. A flicker of gold, faint but real, sparked at her fingertips. It wasn't Cale's starlight. It was something warmer, more terrestrial. It was the light of her own spirit, of a heart that had chosen to fight for its own freedom. The hunter's beam wavered, repelled not by force, but by the sheer, unexpected resilience of its target. It was only for a second, but it was enough. Cale, with a cry of effort, slammed his glowing sword down, shattering the hunter's device. The creature recoiled with a hiss like escaping steam, and its companions, seeing their prey was not so easily taken, retreated to their dark ship, which ascended back into the twilight sky as silently as it had arrived. The market was left in a state of stunned, grieving silence. The emptiness where love had been was a new, cold presence. Breathing heavily, Cale turned to Lysandra, his eyes wide with shock and something else, a dawning, terrible wonder. You shouldn't have been able to do that," he whispered. "Their weapons drain emotion. They don't interact with mortal will. Not unless—" He reached out, his fingers hovering near her hand, where the last vestiges of the golden flicker had faded. Unless that will is touched by something fundamental, something old. Lysandra looked down at her own hands, then back at the alley of severed threads, her mind reeling with the implications. Who was she? What was she? The journey was no longer just an escape. It was becoming a descent into the deepest mysteries of their world, and of her own soul. Part 4. The Heart of the Leviathan. The silence in the wake of the hunter's attack was heavier than any noise. It was the silence of stolen souls, of voids where joy had once lived. The market, moments before a cacophony of life, was now a graveyard of hollowed-out spirits. The merchant and his wife stood motionless, staring at each other with the blank curiosity of strangers. The sight was more chilling than any corpse. "We cannot stay." Cale's voice was rough, stripped raw. He sheathed his sword, the silvery glow fading from the blade, and his own light seemed dimmer, strained. The confrontation had cost him. He took Lysandra's arm, his grip firm. "The hunters found us here. They will report back to whatever master they serve. Varric's shadows will be closing in." They hurried back through the now desolate pathways, the festive lanterns looking like mocking eyes in the gloom. Bourne was already at the moorings, his cutlass drawn, his single eye scanning the chaotic sky. "Saw the black ship," he grunted. "Nasty business. Get in." The storm petrel slipped from its hiding place like a ghost, Cale pushing the ether engines to a hum that spoke of urgent speed. They left the market of shadows behind, a constellation of sorrow receding into the vast, indifferent twilight. For a long time no one spoke. Alara sat with her arms wrapped around herself, shivering despite the blankets. Lysandra stared at her hands, where that flicker of gold had manifested. It had felt like a part of her she never knew existed. A deep, resonant chord struck within her soul. "What did you mean?" she finally asked, her voice quiet but steady. She looked at Cale, who stood at the wheel, his profile a sharp line against the star-flecked blackness. "When you said my will was touched by something fundamental?" Cale was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. He navigated the ship towards a colossal serpentine skeleton of a creature that floated in the distance, its ribcage large enough to swallow cities. "The star hunters are scavengers of emotion," he began, his tone that of a scholar recounting a terrible truth. "They feed on the energy of bonds, particularly love, because it is the most potent, the most complex. It is a refined energy to them, but they are like insects that can only drink nectar. They have the means to extract it, but they cannot interact with the root of the flower itself, the soil, the sun, the life force that creates the nectar." He glanced at her, his stormy eyes intense. "What you didn't just block them. You didn't have a bond for them to feed on in that moment. Not one strong enough for their devices to latch onto. You repelled them with the raw potential of your own spirit, your defiance, your will to be. That is not a thread. That is the loom itself. It is a power that is ancient, primordial. It is the power of the earth from which the first stars were born." Lysandra absorbed his words, each one a stone dropping into the still pool of her understanding, sending out ripples that disturbed everything she knew. "The earth? But I am from Aurelian. We are of the sky." "Are you?" Cale asked softly. "Your bloodline, the House of Argent. The stories say your ancestors were the first to learn the secrets of the levity spores, the first to build the suspension engines. They raised a city from the ground, Lysandra. Your roots are in the soil, no matter how high you've flown. And the earth remembers its children. The concept was staggering. Her entire identity was built upon the supremacy of the sky, the divinity of being above the common world. Now this wanderer was telling her her true power, the one that had inexplicably saved her, was a gift from the very dirt she had been taught to scorn. Their course was set for the heart of the Leviathan, the route old Neth had whispered of. As they drew nearer, the scale of the creature's remains became awe-inspiring. It was not merely a large beast, it was a landscape of bone, a dead god drifting through the void. They sailed between its ribs, which arched over them like the pillars of a celestial cathedral. The light here was strange, filtered through the phosphorescent algae that clung to the ancient skeleton, casting everything in a dim greenish-blue glow. "The weeping ruins are on the other side," Kale murmured, his voice hushed in the immense space. "This passage should hide our trail. The Leviathan's bones still resonate with its long-dead life. It muddies the senses, scries, and tracking spells. It is a place of mourning, and grief has its own magic." The air inside the ribcage was still and cold. The only sound was the gentle hum of their own engines and the occasional distant drip of water. It felt sacred and sorrowful. It was here, in the quiet belly of the beast, that the walls between them began to truly crumble. Later, as Bourne took the wheel and Alara finally succumbed to exhausted sleep, Lysandra found Kale standing at the bow, staring into the phosphorescent gloom. She came to stand beside him, the silence between them comfortable, charged with unspoken truths. "You see them now, don't you?" he asked quietly without looking at her. "The threads between you and Alara. It's grown stronger, brighter, since you fled together." Lysandra didn't see them, not with her eyes, but she could feel it. A tangible cord of loyalty and shared fear, warm and steadfast, connecting her to her sleeping handmaiden. She nodded. "I can feel it. And the one between us?" The question was a whisper, a vulnerability laid bare in the half-light. Kale turned to her then, and the look in his eyes was enough to steal the air from her lungs. It was a look of wonder and of profound terror. "It's there," he breathed. "It's the most beautiful thing I've seen in a long, long time. It's like spun sunlight and starlight, all woven together. It's fragile, but it's stubborn. It refuses to break." He lifted his hand, his fingers hovering just inches from her cheek, tracing the path of the invisible thread. "This is the curse, Lysandra. This is what fades me. Every second I look at it, every moment I feel it strengthen, a little more of my light is spent. To love is for me to die. I have spent my entire existence avoiding this exact moment." Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic, hopeful, terrified rhythm. "And now," he let out a shaky breath, a puff of mist in the chill air. "Now I find I do not care about the cost." His hand finally gently cupped her cheek. His touch was not cold like Varex's, nor was it burning with a mundane heat. It was a warmth that seeped into her very bones, a resonance, as if his star-born soul was recognizing something in her earth-touched one. She leaned into his touch, her eyes closing for a brief second. When she opened them, tears glistened on her lashes. "I will not be the death of you, Kale. You would be the life of me," he countered, his voice thick with emotion. "A short, brilliant life, filled with more meaning than an eternity of lonely wandering. You have shown me that." He leaned forward slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away. She did not. His lips met hers, and it was not a kiss of frantic passion, but of a devastating, gentle certainty. It was the taste of starlight and ozone, of cool night air and warm, desperate hope. It was a connection that bypassed words, a silent vow spun from the very threads of destiny he could see. In that kiss she felt his light, not fading but flaring, pouring into her, and she felt her own earthbound strength rising to meet it, a golden warmth flooding her veins. It was a transcendent moment, suspended in the heart of a dead Leviathan, a perfect, silent symphony of two souls choosing their doom and their destiny in the same breath. When they parted, they were both trembling. The silvery light around Kale pulsed softly, and for a moment, it seemed to burn a little brighter, infused with the gold of her own spirit. The moment was shattered by a low, urgent growl from Bourne at the wheel. "Kale, we have a problem." They turned. Ahead, through the final arch of the Leviathan's ribs, the weeping ruins were visible. It was a breathtaking sight. A dozen shattered islands, their architecture elegant and alien, draped in waterfalls that fell into the endless sky, truly looking like a city of tears. But moored between them, blocking the exit from the skeletal passage, was a familiar, golden-hulled warship flying the sunstone banner of Aurelian. And standing at its prow, his robes of state swirling around him in an unfelt wind, was Lord Varec. His face was a calm mask, but his purple eyes burned with a cold, triumphant fire. He had found them. The storm petrel was trapped, the Leviathan's bones at their back, Varec's ship before them, and nothing but a mile of open, empty sky on either side. The brief, beautiful respite was over. The storm had found them again. Part 5. The Weeping Ruins and the Night Sea. The air in the Leviathan's heart grew thick and heavy, the gentle phosphorescence now feeling like the glow of a predator's eyes. Lord Varec's voice, amplified by sorcery, cut across the void, smooth and cold as polished ice. "Lysandra," he called, the name of violation in the sacred silence. "This childish flight is at an end. Return to me, and the wanderer may keep his fleeting life. Defy me, and I will unmake him before your eyes, thread by fragile thread." Kale did not flinch. His hand, which had just moments ago been so tender against Lysandra's cheek, now rested on the hilt of his sword, his knuckles white. The soft silver light around him tightened, becoming a shield, a promise of violence. "He's lying," Kale said, his voice low and steady for her ears only. "He won't let me live. I am a flaw in his design, a witness to his coercion. And my nature, it is an offense to his kind of power." Bourne had already swung the storm petrel broadside, bringing their few, small ballistae to bear. The big ship's clumsy in tight spaces, the first mate grunted, his one eye narrowed in calculation. "We might be able to slip past if we make him flinch." "Ilara," Lysandra said, turning to her handmaiden, who was now awake and trembling. "Get below. Now." But Ilara shook her head, her face pale but determined. "No, my lady. I stand with you." She picked up a heavy marlinspike from the deck, holding it with both hands. The thread of gold between them flared brightly in Kale's vision, a beacon of defiant loyalty. Varec, impatient with their silence, made his move. He raised a hand, and a dozen of his golden-armored guards leaped from his ship's deck, not falling, but riding glimmers of solidified shadow towards the storm petrel. At the same time, sorcerous bolts of void energy, the same consuming darkness he had used in Aurelian, lanced from the warship's prows, aimed at their engines. "Bourne, the engines!" "Lysandra, stay behind me!" Kale shouted. Chaos erupted. Boren bellowed, spinning the wheel, and the storm petrel jinked sideways, one void bolt searing past the hull and scorching the wood. The other slammed into their stern, and the ship shuddered violently, the hum of the ether crystals faltering. They were wounded. Kale met the first of the boarding guards. His glowing sword was a blur of silver, moving with a preternatural grace. He wasn't just fighting, he was severing. Lysandra, watching in horrified fascination, saw that he wasn't aiming to kill, but to disarm, to disable. And with each touch of his blade, he seemed to slice at the thin, official gray threads that bound the soldiers to Varric's command. The men stumbled, confused, their aggressive fervor fading into uncertainty. But there were too many. While Kale was a whirlwind of defensive light, another group of guards flanked them, making for Lysandra. It was Alara who moved. With a cry that was part terror, part fury, she swung the marlin spike, catching a guard square in the helmet. The clang echoed, and the man staggered. It was a futile gesture, but it bought a second. A second was all Kale needed. He disengaged from his own fight and was at their side in a heartbeat, his light flaring to push the guards back. In that moment of distraction, Varric acted. He did not target Kale. He targeted the ship itself. A concentrated spear of pure negation shot from his fingertips, striking the storm petrel's main mast. There was no explosion, only a terrible silent unraveling. The wood did not splinter. It dissolved into motes of dust. The ship listed sharply, its remaining engines screaming in protest. Lysandra lost her footing, sliding across the tilting deck towards the edge. She screamed, her hands scrambling for a hold that wasn't there. Kale's head whipped around. He saw her, saw the abyss yawning beneath her. He saw the dark, triumphant smile on Varric's face. And he saw the threads, the bright, new one connecting him to Lysandra, and the countless dark chains connecting Varric to his followers. A terrible clarity settled over him. He couldn't reach her in time. Not physically. So he reached for something else. With a roar that seemed to tear from the very core of his being, Kale didn't attack Varric. Instead, he plunged his glowing sword into the deck of the storm petrel. He poured his light, his very essence, not into a weapon, but into a signal, a beacon of pure, untainted connection. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic for Varric. The silvery radiance erupted from Kale, so bright it was painful to look at. It washed over the Aurelian warship, and for a single breathtaking moment, it illuminated the intricate, horrible web of Varric's power. Thousands of dark threads, each one siphoned from a soul he had consumed, connected back to him, feeding him. And Kale's light, the antithesis of that consumption, touched every single one. It was like pouring water onto a grease fire. The dark threads didn't just sever. They recoiled. They writhed and snapped, and the stolen energy they carried, the love, the devotion, the affection, flashed back along their length in a wave of blinding, liberated light. On the deck of his warship, Varric screamed. It was not a sound of pain, but of loss, of violent, sudden impoverishment. The power he had hoarded for centuries, the sustenance of 1,000 souls, was ripped from him all at once. His form, once imposing and solid, seemed to shrink, to desiccate. He clawed at his chest, his purple eyes wide with a terror he had never known, the terror of being truly, utterly empty. The backlash threw the Aurelian guards into disarray. Their binding chains gone, they were just men again, confused and terrified. The warship, its sorcerer supports disrupted, listed heavily, its attack forgotten. But the cost was immense. Kale collapsed to his knees, the brilliant light around him guttering out like a star in its death throes. He was translucent, insubstantial. The silver was gone, replaced by a pale, ghostly gray. He had spent nearly everything. Kale! Lysandra scrambled across the broken deck, grabbing him before he could fall. He was cold, so cold. His storm gray eyes were dim, the light in them fading fast. "The thread," he whispered, his voice a faint breath. "Our thread, it's still there. It held." He managed a weak, bloody smile. "It was worth it." Boren, seizing the opportunity, gunned the Storm Petrel's remaining engines. The ship, crippled but defiant, lurched past the stunned Aurelian warship and broke through into the open sky before the weeping ruins. They did not stop. They flew until the Leviathan was a speck behind them, until the weeping waterfalls of the ruins were a distant shimmer. They flew until the Storm Petrel could fly no more, its engines sputtering and dying, forcing them to set down on the first stable, floating island they could find, a desolate piece of rock at the very edge of the known sky, where the constellations began to twist into strange new patterns. Before them stretched the night sea, an endless black expanse where stars were born and died in silent, luminous cataclysms. Lysandra cradled Kale's head in her lap. He was breathing, but each breath was shallow. He was a ghost of the man who had kissed her among the bones of the Leviathan. "He's dying," she whispered, her tears falling onto his pale face. Boren stood nearby, his expression grim. He gave too much." "No," Lysandra said, her voice hardening with a resolve that felt as ancient as the rock beneath her. "He gave everything for me. I will not let it be in vain." She looked from Kale's fading form to the wild star-churned expanse of the night sea. She remembered the flicker of gold at her fingertips, the earth-born strength Kale had spoken of. He said my will was fundamental, that it was the power of the earth. She looked up at Boren, her storm-gray eyes blazing with a new terrifying light. "The earth gives life, and I will not let his be taken." She had no plan, no magic. She had only her will, her love, and the fading beautiful thread that still connected her soul to his. It had to be enough. The final journey was into the heart of the light itself, and she would drag him back from the edge, or follow him into the eternal dark. Part 6. A Constellation of Two. The island was a barren altar at the edge of creation. The rock beneath Lysandra's knees was cold and porous, a stark contrast to the warm, living marble of Aurelian. Behind them the known world ended. Before them the night sea began. A vast black velvet canvas where infant stars ignited in nebulous wombs and ancient suns died in silent, violet explosions. The silence here was absolute, a pressure against the eardrums, broken only by the ragged, shallow sound of Kale's breathing. He was fading, not like a flame being snuffed, but like a mirage dissolving in the heat. His form had lost all solidity. He was a sketch done in smoke and moonlight, the brilliant silver of his essence now a dull leaden gray. Lysandra held him, her arms wrapped around a chill that seeped into her own bones. The beautiful, stubborn thread that connected them was still there, but it was thin, strained, its light flickering in a wind she could not feel. "He will not last the hour." Boren's voice was a low rumble, stripped of its usual gruffness, leaving only a hollow respect. He stood a few paces away, a solitary sentinel against the impossible vastness. He spent his core. "There is no coming back from that." "There is," Lysandra whispered, her gaze fixed on Kale's face. She brushed a strand of ash-colored hair from his forehead, her touch the only warmth he seemed to have left. He told me I was the loom, the earth from which the first stars were born. I have to believe that. Belief is a poor weapon against the laws of heaven, girl. It is the only one I have. Her mind raced, a desperate cartographer trying to map a path through myth and memory. Kale was a child of a fallen star. His light was celestial, a finite resource that was consumed by the act of love. She was, by his own account, touched by the primordial earth, a source of life, of potential. He was the ember. She was the tinder. He had poured himself out to save her. Now she had to find a way to pour herself back in. But how? She had no sorcery, no training. Her one act of power in the market had been instinctual, a reflex of defiance. This needed to be a choice, a deliberate, willing act of creation. She looked from Kale's dying form to the cosmic forge of the night sea. Stars were born from chaos and dust. Could a soul be reborn the same way? His light is love, she murmured, the realization dawning with a terrifying clarity. And love consumed him. But what if it could also sustain him? She looked up at Boren, her eyes wide with the audacity of her thought. What if the love isn't the fuel, but the spark? What if his curse was a lie he told himself to keep from burning too brightly? Boren grunted, a non-committal sound, but he didn't dismiss her. He had seen the impossible aboard the Storm Petrel too many times to discount it now. Lysandra knew what she had to do. It was not a spell, not a ritual. It was an offering. Gently, she laid Kale down on the cold rock. She knelt over him, placing her hands on his chest. He was so cold. She closed her eyes, shutting out the dying stars and the silent void. She turned her senses inward, away from the world of sight and sound, and into the world of feeling Kale had shown her. She sought the thread, not with her eyes but with her soul. She reached for that trembling golden-silver filament that connected her heart to his. She found it, a chord of exquisite vulnerability, thrumming with the memory of his kiss, the sound of his laughter, the weight of his sacrifice. It was the most real thing she had ever known. And she began to pour. It was not a transfer of energy. It was a merging. She poured her memories into the thread. Not just the grand, dramatic ones of flight and battle, but the quiet human ones. The feel of his hand on her cheek in the Leviathan's heart. The way his stormy eyes crinkled when he smiled. The solid, reassuring weight of his presence at the wheel of the ship. She poured her gratitude for her stolen freedom, her awe at the floating ruins, her fierce protective rage when Varric had threatened him. She poured her love, not as an abstract concept but as a living, breathing force. The love that had grown in the dark soil of her caged heart, nurtured by his kindness and watered by their shared tears. It was a terrestrial, stubborn, enduring love. The love of the earth, not the sky. She gave it all to him. She held nothing back, offering up the very core of her will, her identity, herself. It was the most terrifying and liberating act of her life. She felt herself weakening, a profound exhaustion seeping into her limbs, as if she were giving her own lifeblood. For a long, agonizing moment, nothing happened. Kale remained a gray phantom beneath her hands. The thread remained faint. Despair, cold and final, began to creep into her heart. And then a spark. A single brilliant point of silver light ignited deep within his chest, right where her hands rested. It was tiny, no bigger than a pinprick, but it was pure and undiluted. It was followed by another, and another. Like the first stars piercing the veil of a newborn universe, points of light began to bloom all along the fading thread between them. They were not the cool, distant silver of his former light. They were warmer, brighter, infused with the gold of her own essence. His celestial nature was being rewoven, its very fabric altered by her terrestrial spirit. The light spread from the thread into his body, flowing through his veins like liquid starlight. The leaden gray was burned away, replaced by a radiant, opalescent glow, a perfect fusion of silver and gold. His form solidified, the warmth of life returning to his skin. His chest rose and fell with a deep, shuddering breath. His eyes fluttered open. They were no longer the eyes of a weary wanderer or a dying star. They were the eyes of a man reborn. The stormy gray was still there, but now it swirled with flecks of captured sunlight, and from their depths shone a light that was both eternal and profoundly, wonderfully new. He looked at her, and the love in his gaze was no longer a curse. It was a source. It was power. "Lysandra," he breathed, her name a prayer on his lips. He reached up, his hand solid, warm, alive, cupping her face. You didn't just save me. You remade me." Tears of relief streamed down her face. "We remade each other." As they helped each other to their feet, they turned to face the night sea. They were different, whole, the two halves of a single completed truth. Kale, the star child, no longer feared his own heart. Lysandra, the Earth daughter, had embraced the sky within her, and they knew with a certainty that surpassed understanding that they could not return to the old world. Aurelian Varec, the politics of a gilded cage. It was all a distant, insignificant dream. They were something new now, something the world of floating cities and shadow markets could not contain. Hand in hand, they walked to the very edge of the island. The cosmic winds of the night sea tugged at their clothes, smelling of ozone and Genesis. "The thread," Kale said, his voice filled with awe. He wasn't looking at the space between them anymore. He was looking at them. "It's not between us anymore. It is us. We are the thread." Lysandra understood. They had transcended the need for connection. They had become the connection itself. As one, they stepped off the edge of the world. They did not fall. Their bodies dissolved into a magnificent, swirling nebula of light, silver and gold intertwined, forever chasing each other in a perfect, celestial dance. They rose not as individuals, but as a new constellation, a story written in fire across the infinite black, a testament to a love that had refused to be consumed, that had chosen instead to become the very fabric of the heavens. Boren, watching from the rocky shore, saw the new light bloom in the sky. He grunted, a slow smile spreading across his weathered face. He raised a flask in a silent salute, then turned to the crippled Storm Petrel. He had a ship to fix, and a new legend to carry back to the world of the living. High above, in the silent, ever-turning clockwork of the universe, two souls shone as one. An eternal promise in the night, a tale beyond the stars, forever reminding those who dared to look up that the greatest power was not in the light of a single star, nor the strength of the solitary earth, but in the glorious transcendent fusion of the two. We hope you journeyed far and felt every moment within the starlit realms of the Lady and the Wanderer. Their constellation now burns eternal in the skies of our imagination, a testament to love that defies even the laws of heaven and earth. But every epic tale deserves an audience, and every listener's voice is a new star in our own creative cosmos. If this story of Lysandra and Kale lit a fire in your soul, We would be so grateful if you could help other wanderers find their way here. Subscribe to Velvet Valor Romantasy audiobooks so you never miss a journey. Each new story is a new world, a new passion, a new escape into the extraordinary. Leave a like to let us know this tale resonated with you. It's the kind of magic that fuels our next adventure. And most importantly, we'd love to hear your voice in the comments. Tell us, what was your favorite moment? Did you sail with them through the market of shadows? Did your heart break in the Leviathan's heart? Who is your next romantic fantasy hero waiting for in the wings? Your thoughts, your theories, your passion. It's the golden thread that connects us all. Thank you for listening. Until the next tale begins, may your skies be full of wonder.